Greetings, sixth grade students, and thank you all so much for showing up to episode 2 of Storytime. I know Tuck is super excited, and Luna's kind of half asleep, but she's interested in this story as well. All right, everybody, you have probably heard of the most famous leader of ancient Rome and one of the most famous people in history, Julius Caesar. You may have heard that it was responsible for the end of the Roman Republic, or that he eventually had all the powers of a king. But I bet you probably haven't heard this story before all of that happened, when, as a young man, he was abducted by pirates. So sit back in your favorite comfy chair and enjoy. Long before he would lead armies to conquer ancient Gaul, or modern-day France, long before he declared himself dictator for life, and long before he was assassinated on the Senate floor, Julius Caesar was a young man, a very wealthy young man from a prominent Roman family, and that's going to figure in pretty big into the rest of the story. As a wealthy young man, Julius Caesar was a perfect target for pirates, Sicilian pirates to be specific. Sicilian pirates who knew that Julius Caesar would demand a very large ransom. So, when they had the opportunity, they snatched him up and they held him captive on their ship. Young Julius Caesar didn't think that they would hurt him because, after all, if they did, there wouldn't be much of a ransom to pay. So he famously and boldly told his kidnappers that once he was free, he was going to come back and kill them all. I thought that was a kind of interesting part of the story, Tuck. Tough audience. Now, of course, they didn't take this young boy seriously with all of his threats. They just wanted his family's money. And little did they know that this boy was going to be true to his word. Now, when the pirates asked for a ransom of 20 talents, which is about $600,000 in today's money, young Julius Caesar laughed at their faces. And he said, "I'm worth at least 50 talents, people." Come on, it's not that funny. 50 talents, that's like $1.4 million in today's money. Well, either way, the pirate said, okay, so you're worth 50 talents. That's what we'll ask for. And sure enough, after 38 days of captivity, his family paid the pirates 50 talents, or $1.4 million in today's money. And young Julius Caesar was freed. Okay, so Julius Caesar is one day going to grow up and become this amazing military general. But at this time, he's just a young man with no military training and really no military connections. But once he was released, it turns out that having a family with a lot of money really comes in handy if you're looking for revenge. So Caesar somehow puts together a small fleet of ships and a few soldiers, and he goes back to the island where he was held captive. And apparently these pirates really didn't take him seriously because they were anchored in the same spot where they held him ransom at. So it didn't take long. Caesar begins by demanding that the pirates give back the 50 talents that was paid for his ransom. Next, he has his soldiers confiscate or take away every possession that these pirates have. And if you've been following the story to this point, you probably know where it's going. The next step was Caesar had all of the pirates executed. Pretty rough stuff. There were a lot of pirates, so I mean, it's probably going to take a little while to execute them all. But eventually, yeah, all of the pirates get executed. That's some pretty rough stuff right there. But in the end, the Sicilian pirates learned a really hard lesson that day, which was Julius Caesar was a man of his word, and he was not someone to anger. Come on, Tuck, that was a big part of the story too. It's interesting, man. But anyway, Julius Caesar is going to go on to become this beloved military general. He becomes even wealthier through all of his conquests, and eventually he becomes a dictator of Rome. And as his power grew, he became really popular with the poor and the middle classes of Rome, And that was a big threat, especially if you were a wealthy Roman senator and you were really worried about someone having the powers of a king. If you tuned into last week's story time, Horatius at the Bridge, you already know that the Romans did not like the idea of having a king. And because of that, despite all of his popularity with the common people, on March 15th, 44 BC, the Ides of March, as it's known, the middle of March, Julius Caesar shows up to the Roman Senate and he's assassinated on the Senate floor. Yeah, pretty rough stuff. And that's the part of the story of Caesar most people learn a lot about, is that he's this big time leader of Rome and he's assassinated, and it really changes the whole course of Roman history and world history when you think about it. Julius Caesar's life and death was a huge impact on Rome and a huge part of the story of Rome. And if the Sicilian pirates had known who that boy was going to become, it's safe to say that they never would have kidnapped him. And had it gone the other way, and maybe the family didn't pay the ransom, who knows what the history of Rome would be like or what world history would be like. But as it is, it's a fascinating story, and I hoped you enjoyed this deep cut of Julius Caesar about the time he was kidnapped by pirates. Well, thanks for the cheers. Now, don't forget, since you've heard the story now, make sure you go back to our Google Classroom, and there's a little form where you can show me and Tuck and Luna, who's still asleep, all that you learned from our story today. And we look forward to seeing you back here next week. Special thanks to Tuck, Luna, and on our sound effects and production, my amazing and beautiful girlfriend, Jamie. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.